Hi, I'm Jessica Tomer. I'm an editor with College Express magazine and collegeexpress.com, and I'm here today to talk about college roommates and roommate agreements. So, once upon a time, I was a college freshman, not too long ago, but at Emerson College in Boston. And at the time and since then, I always thought that I had what was a perfect roommate setup, actually. And it's a little weird to say, but that's because we weren't really friends. We were very friendly and cordial, but we weren't, trying to be BFFs. And um, I think that we struck a good balance um, between being respectful and being friendly. And then after we were done living with each other freshman year, we went on to become quite good friends. So, you know, everyone's different, and that's not to say that you can't be best friends with your freshman year roommate. And I know people who have, who've been very close for all 5 years, 4 or 5 years, and though it's not without its um, conflicts sometimes as roommates have, it worked for them. But in general, it's just good to go into your freshman year with certain expectations of what living with someone new will entail. And I'm going to go over some of those expectations with you today. So, how are roommates assigned? It generally varies by school, and size is a pretty big factor. Sometimes very large schools will just use a computer program to assign dorms. Sometimes smaller schools will have staff on hand who can look at individual students and their preferences and do some more exact matching that way. But really, in either scenario, there's a lot of luck involved. Um, but that's one of the great things about college and having a roommate is that it's this incredible opportunity to meet new people and be exposed to new viewpoints and backgrounds. And you really might be surprised what you learn just by living with someone who comes from a different state, a different part of the country, or a different part of the world. Of course, if you're going to a school and you might know someone in the freshman class from your high school or your hometown, you might be considering living with that person, especially if it's a good friend of yours. And to that, I say no. Me and Grumpy Cat say no. And it's not so much that, being friends with someone, living with someone that you care about, it goes beyond those kind of complications. It's again more about college being this unprecedented opportunity to break out of your comfort zone and your niche and the person that you were in high school. It's really a blank slate, and you can do and be whatever feels right. And meeting new people is definitely a part of getting out of that comfort zone. And living with a complete stranger is pretty much the pinnacle of that. And again, you're going to learn and grow so much from the experience, from the little details of just sharing a living space to getting to know someone new better. And don't worry, your buddy from home is still going to be there. You can get coffee, see each other after class. That's always an option. But what do you do before move-in day? So you'll most likely be informed of who you'll be living with several weeks before you move in. And this gives you a chance to email or call or even meet up in person with your new roommate before orientation day. And you might even be able to meet up before fall orientation, perhaps during a summer orientation or a special event for admitted students. And if you're able to do that, I highly recommend it. And if you're not able to meet in person, that's okay too. Again, I would recommend at least reaching out to them via email or phone or both, or Facebook even. You can use Facebook messaging, and contacting each other ahead of time can be very helpful and reassuring. And at the very least, it eliminates the anxiety of going into your first day away from home and living with a complete and total stranger. Um, But it's not just a chance for you to get to know each other better, though you certainly can. You certainly will, and you can discuss things like why you picked this school, where you came from, the kind of extracurricular activities you're involved in, and things like that. But it also gives you a chance to talk about some of the details of who's bringing what, like the trifecta of the TV, mini fridge, and microwave. And you might even encounter a mini fridge and microwave combo. Those are pretty handy. And if you're able to discuss ahead of time, who's bringing what, you can avoid situations like having two microwaves and no fridge in which to keep food fresh. You don't want to be in that situation. Just remember, as you're meeting this person for the first time, that it's probably the first time that they are being introduced to a roommate. They might have a roommate situation. People can be shy, they can be nervous, it takes some time. It's as new for them as it is for you. But this is a great opportunity to, again, get to know each other, figure out some details, and perhaps during this introductory period you might be able to discuss or fill out a roommate agreement. So what is a roommate agreement? It's not your Big Bang Theory-esque 100-page document that's filled with clauses and weird things like that. And it is found in the real world, as it were, in other situations where people might be entering into a roommate situation as adults. But it's basically a document that lays out some basic guidelines and some expectations for roommates. It may be required, it may just be encouraged by the school. But the gist of it is that you are both entitled to a safe and healthy and comfortable living environment, and a roommate agreement or a roommate contract or code or whatever your school might call it really goes into those issues in depth and what it takes to maintain that kind of safe, healthy, comfortable environment. It might be a questionnaire, it might be some talking points. Every school is different, and I have a couple of examples that I'll show you on the next slide. But in this context, it's also like an honor code that's agreed upon in advance, and it hammers out the details of what you both expect and really deserve from the situation. What does a roommate agreement entail? So it might start with things like schedules. And ideally, you'll be paired up with someone or multiple people with whom you're relatively aligned, like either you're both night owls or early risers or what have you. But if you are typically up until the wee hours of the morning and your roommate has crew practice at the crack of dawn, how are you going to deal with those things? That's an issue, and other issues like it, that a roommate agreement will discuss and help you figure out ahead of time. For example, in that situation, could you go to bed a little earlier? Could your roommate use earplugs or an eye mask? And other comparable situations, do you respect a reasonable amount of quiet time to study? What if one of you likes to study with background noise, like TV, or what if you prefer complete silence? How are you going to deal with those scenarios? Or what if one or both of you has a significant other? Will they be around often? Will you want privacy on Friday night to, watch a movie or something? How far in advance should you let each other know if an event like that is coming? And again, in the roommate agreement, you'll discuss all of those things and figure out the answers to those questions before you're stuck with a potentially awkward or uncomfortable situation. They'll also talk about physical stuff, your belongings, like your food and your clothes. Or for example, if you bring a printer, can your roommate use it? If your roommate does use it, Who's responsible for replenishing the paper and the ink? Or would they just give you some money for things like that? Things like that, they might seem like a no-brainer to you, but they're often actually really good to confirm in writing or just in a conversation ahead of time. Like your food. Is your food off limits? Or is your food free to share? Uh, or if your roommate, can your roommate share your food if they contribute a few dollars? What about your bed? It is totally reasonable to expect that your roommate will not go crawling into your bed to take a nap when you're not around. But what if your roommate has, friends over? Are those people allowed to just sit on your bed if you're not there? That might make you uncomfortable. You might be totally fine with it. The thing is, you can't really assume that the other person knows your expectations and vice versa. So you'll discuss things like cleanliness and noise, personal space, boundaries, all that fun stuff. And again, it might seem really simple to you, and as you're going over it, it might feel like a really obvious rehashing of things you both agree on, but it also might unearth some interesting and important details that one or both of you have never considered. And there are plenty of examples of roommate agreements online if your school does not require or encourage it. But I certainly do suggest that you look up some of those examples and get a feel for what they ask and use a roommate agreement even if you don't have to. For example, we have Castleton College here, and to the right, that's actually Amherst College's roommate contract form. Amherst College in particular, I think, has a really comprehensive roommate agreement page on their website that's worth taking a look at. And hopefully you can see here, hopefully the text isn't too small, but they have questions about substance abuse, or substance use rather, how you would feel if your roommate did that, who's in charge of trash and recycling, what do you guys intend to do about laundry or shower time, and all kinds of little details that, again, it's easy to overlook when you're excited about going to college. This just reminds you of those little things. So a couple of roommate tips, some do's and don'ts. You basically want to be upfront. I think the top tip would be being upfront about these things from the very beginning. You don't want to let something that could start out as a small annoyance snowball into a bigger problem in your relationship. Like, for example, if you know that you are not a morning person, like you are really, really not a morning person, you probably want to let your roommate know from the get-go. That way they're not wondering why you're completely incoherent and kind of cranky before 9 a.m. It's nothing personal, it's just how you are. It's about nipping problems in the bud and, again, addressing those small annoyances early on before they become infuriating habits. And roommate agreements are, again, a really great way to do that. But you really want to be open and mindful and listen to your roommate and what they're asking of you, and expect that they do the same. You don't want to play games, and I don't mean like board games. Board games are awesome. I mean head games or other unfortunate childish games. It's kind of a chance to be a grown-up, mostly. You're mostly a grown-up. Another do would be sharing. Sharing is caring as long as it's on mutual terms. But maybe you're uncomfortable sharing your stuff and your space, but it's important to remember that this is a important exercise in cohabitating and a shared living space, especially one as cozy as a dorm can be. It can take some adjusting, but it's important for both of you, for your peace of mind, for your comfort, to be committed to living together peacefully, and you might just enjoy the experience. Another important do would be erring on the side of caution. You always want to lock your doors and windows every time you leave your dorm room, even if you're just going down the hall for a second. And you would want to adhere to that rule even if you were living by yourself, but it becomes even more important when you're responsible for another person's belongings. You definitely don't want to have to explain to your roomie how their MacBook Pro is missing because you know, went down to take a shower and forgot to lock your door. Finally, you just want to let it be, let things be, kind of let water roll off your back, as they say. You don't want to force a relationship. A friendship will happen if it's meant to happen, and if it doesn't happen, that's okay too. Realize that everyone has bad days. People can be shy. All that being said, no, you absolutely should not have to put up with a roommate who eats all your food or trashes your dorm or smells like an old sock. If that person, accidentally borrows your shampoo one time, it's probably not worth starting a conflict over. Of course, there are going to be certain boundaries that you absolutely should not cross, but again, hopefully you will have addressed those important issues early on and, know your molehills from your mountains. People make mistakes, and again, this whole having a roommate thing is probably new to you both. All that being said, what do you do if your roommate is the devil? So, let's say your roommate does eat all your food, trashes your room, and really does smell like an old sock. What do you do? Well, maybe you didn't talk about the little things before they became a big problem when you first moved in together, or maybe your once chill roommate suddenly does a 180 and starts acting erratically. You never know. These things are rare, but they could happen. First, it's important to try to have that tough conversation, that adult conversation. Yes, it can be awkward, but you might open their eyes to something they weren't aware of, and vice versa. It's generally just a good learning experience in general. It's a good thing to be able to do. But if that doesn't work, or if you feel really uncomfortable, it's time to ask your resident assistant or resident advisor. And if you're unfamiliar with a resident advisor, or also known as an RA, they're typically students, one or several per dorm room or per floor, who are just on call to handle student issues, generally 24/7. And they might check in on you from time to time and organize events. And they're also there to be mediators in the event of a roommate conflict. And hopefully, if it does come to using an RA as a mediator, you'll be able to work it out and it won't be a big deal. But if not, the last option is reassignment, finding a new roommate, and or a new room. Keep in mind that it probably won't happen right away, and your school might have certain guidelines for dealing with reassignments. Like you might be asked to wait a certain amount of time, a certain number of weeks after moving in to see if things resolve on their own. But it is an option. You can always keep that in the back of your mind. Finally, if you ever feel unsafe with your roommate, or something really unsettling happens, you can always tell your RA, and you should do so immediately. You should run and tell that. And it's not really a common occurrence, again, these kind of roommate horror stories, so don't be scared, but just know that you have options and you should always trust your gut. Just remember, it's time to have to be a little bit more of a grown-up, and listening is an important part of that. Rehashing some of the things that I've said before, it's important to be open to change and new experiences, to learning and growing. That's really what college is all about. It's what you guys signed up for, and it's a wonderful learning experience and growth experience in general. Be mindful of your own actions and be thoughtful toward your roommate and his or her needs, but also be honest and direct if something is bothering you. Um, and that doesn't mean be combative or argumentative or condescending, but say, hey, if you can let me know before you have people over for a study group, I'd appreciate it. So it doesn't have to be um, a big, important, deep conversation. And it all boils down to the golden rule. You want to treat other people as you would like to be treated. And basically, if you stick by that, you're going to be fine. Well, that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. Um, Please feel free to visit collegeexpress.com to learn more about life on campus. We love talking about roommates and student life and all those fun things, and we'd love to have you. Bye-bye.